Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. I'm Sam Thrasher, podcast host for this week. Our podcast is driven by our friends over at Ridge Rock Hunt Company, and we will talk more about them at the close of our episode today. Joining me today is a special guest, Mr. Dustin Huff. Dustin actually made contact with our Midwestern Regional Staff Coordinator, Tyler Wolf, who unfortunately is not able to join us with today's conversation. He wanted to, but with work and everything, that wasn't possible today. But Dustin, welcome to Fall Obsession Podcast, man. Happy to have you on.
Appreciate y'all having me, Sam. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Happy to have you, man. Real quick for our listeners, just to start off our conversation today, tell us kind of who you are, where you're from, and what you hunt.
Cool. Name's Dustin Huff. I'm 28 years old. I am from Indiana, southeastern Indiana, I should say. Last year, I was fortunate enough to shoot the number one typical whitetail in the United States, and it's been crazy. That's how I met Tyler. I was doing a show at Rogers Sporting Goods in Liberty, Missouri, and Tyler came up and started talking with me and told me about the Fall Obsession. I said, yeah, I'd love to get on there and talk with y'all. So here I am.
Awesome. Well, man, yeah, we really appreciate your time and coming on the podcast with us today. So the number one typical whitetail, that's a big accomplishment right there in and of itself. And I imagine that your life has probably changed a little bit since killing a buck like that. Am I right?
Yeah, it's been nuts. Like, I'm just a redneck that goes deer hunting. Been doing it since I was 12 years old. And I just never thought that a deer like that would, be walking on a property that I have been hunting for 16 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been nuts. Been doing a lot of shows. I didn't even know there were, deer shows, so to say, but yeah, we've been doing a lot of those and just taking him around and showing him off.
Gotcha. So just for a little bit of background on yourself, if you don't mind my asking, man, what do you do for a living?
So I'm originally a singer-songwriter. I've been doing that for the past 8-9 years, traveling back and forth to Nashville, Tennessee, back up to southeastern Indiana. I spent my early 20s touring all over the country. I got a good friend named Luke Combs that I was on tour with him for about a year before he signed his big deal. And but yeah, just been doing that for a while. And my second love is deer hunting, and you can find me in the woods come October, November, December.
Yeah. I enjoy Luke Combs' music and everything. And I've heard that he's a pretty big whitetail hunter himself.
Yep.
That's awesome. So you yourself, you prefaced it with, you're a blue collar guy and you never thought that a deer like this would be walking out onto a property you hunt. Without giving too much away, obviously, what kind of property are we talking about? How big, and what was the typical caliber of deer that you've seen over the years? Because you said you've hunted there for quite a while. So
yeah, so it's a 185-acre tract. It's a hog farm. That's a good family friend of my dad's and our whole family, really. He's a big farmer in the area, and he's let us hunt that same property since I killed my first deer on it. Dad's killed a lot of deer on it. My biggest on there is a 134-inch 10-pointer. So, I mean, that's usually what we see, that 130 to 150 class deer. But the biggest that has ever been taken on that property was taken by my dad back whenever I was a freshman. So that's probably been 12 years ago or so. And that scored 153 deducting. That was with deductions. He was probably about 175, 180 inch deer. So that was the biggest deer that we had ever heard of or seen or ever been taken on that property. So shooting this thing was just like, what the heck, you know?
So did you have any intel on this deer, any pictures or anything, or was it just boom, there he is one morning or evening?
Yeah, so I don't run trail cameras on this property. I used to in high school a lot, but since I've been, traveling back and forth the past how many years, I just kind of let it go. And then I go in the, usually the third, fourth week of October and really start hitting it hard just because I've hunted it so long and my dad's been hunting it for so long. Like I just kind of know where to put my stands up, where my set stands are, where the funnels are, where I've killed deer, where dad's killed deer. So we just kind of base it off that and, don't even really mess with cameras on that property.
Gotcha. So take me into this hunt a little bit, and kind of set the stage for us as far as the hunt that you're out there when this deer walks out.
Yeah, so it was November 4th was the evening that it happened, but I had been hunting that whole week. So I think I was in Nashville that week before, and then I got in like the 28th or 29th that weekend, and then hunted that Halloween weekend, and then hunted that whole week. But it was November 4th evening. I passed up how many small, basket fork heads. I was just trying to beat my 134 that I killed in 2020 on that same property. That was my biggest deer. I'm just trying to beat him. And the first shooter I seen on November 4th was whenever Moose. Well, I named him Moose. Moose is what I call him. But yeah. So I've been hunting 7-8 days in a row, 8 to 10 hour days. Right there in the rut. So I'm just finding 4 different set stands is where I'm going to all week. And then that evening, I just decided to take my climber out. And it was just a nice 55 degree evening, just a sweatshirt on. And I went to the west side of the farm, which I hardly ever go to that side just because I leave that to the deer. And took my climber, picked a tree, sawed off 2 limbs, went up, and never seen a deer that whole evening. And then right at 6:30, I saw his antlers come out from the thick where the creek bed was in the thicket. And he started coming up my ridge, and it was unreal, man.
What's going through your mind, like as this deer's approaching you?
At first, it was just like, what the heck, like I didn't even think it was real just because, like I said, he looked like a moose. Like I had never seen a deer like that, on YouTube. I've never seen a deer like that anywhere. So I was just like, what the heck, So I'm just looking at him in awe, eyes open, mouth dropped. And I'm just trying to figure out where can I shoot this deer at? Because like once I figured out that he was taking the ridge coming up towards me, I had to make it was 2 minutes or so. I had to make a pretty quick call on, where I was going to shoot him at, because where he was coming up at was the thickest part of the freaking property. And so I'm watching him while I'm trying to find a shooting lane. And eventually I just whistled at him just because like I knew he wasn't stopping. I didn't really have any shooting lanes. It was so thick. I was like, I got a couple, holes here and there that I could sneak an arrow in. And the first whistle stopped him. He looked at me and he didn't even know I was there. And I'm looking at him, and I let him take one more step. I couldn't shoot him on that first whistle because I got sapling trees and it's just thick right there.
Yeah.
And I let him take one more step. I whistled one more time and he stopped, and I had to lean to the left side of my tree stand and snuck an arrow through. Heard the smack. He ran about 50, 60 yards, looked around, flicked his tail, and went down in the holler that he came from. And I just put my hands up and I was just like, let's go, let's go.
So, I mean, obviously this deer walking up, you're amazed, you're kind of taken back by his size, but did you have any idea the caliber of deer you just shot?
No, I thought it was like a 180-inch deer. So like I knew it was probably the biggest. I knew it was bigger than my dad's, and I knew it was the biggest deer that I'd ever seen. So in my head, I'm saying 180-inch, 185-inch deer, and that's me pushing it because like in my head, that's not even possible. Where I deer hunt, like that's not. There's no way that there's a 185-inch deer. And
Yeah.
so that's what I was thinking. And then it wasn't until that evening I had sent some Snapchats to some friends and, my big buck buddies that they're always after a Pacific deer every year. I'm the kind of guy that I just go out and, hopefully a nice one comes by. And right when I sent it to my two buddies, they said, that's a 200-inch deer. We'll be over in 20 minutes. And I was like, no, man, I was like, that's, and then they're like, don't touch the deer, put the knife down. They were telling me everything. I was like, all right, well, get over here. It was crazy.
Wow. So real quick before we move on, what kind of setup are you running as far as your archery setup?
I use a crossbow, striker crossbow. I got beam and arrows. I use the 2-blade rage. But yeah, have my heat wave up. It's a deer urine that I use. And yeah, he came in and had no idea. I shot him at 40 yards. Yeah, I had to guess too, because like as he was coming up, it was so fast. Like I said, like 2 minutes. I didn't even have time to get my rangefinder out. And so I was just guessing the whole thing, 30, 40, and I just said 40 yards, put the 30-yard pin just a hair high and let it fly.
Wow. That is incredible. So you text your buddies, everybody's coming out. Y'all are gonna go get this deer. Let's talk about the recovery. How did that go?
Yeah, so I called my girlfriend right after I was still in a stand, and because I'm like I said, I was on day 7 or 8, so I hadn't been home very often, and so I called her, told her that I just smoked a giant, and then I called my dad and told him, I said, hey, I think I just beat your 153 is what it has scored after deductions, and I said, I think I beat your 153, and he was like, there's no way, And I called the property owner, and he's got 3 boys. And so we all go and check this deer out. So I get down out of my stand, I go up to the field edge. And by that time, they're all starting to come in. And we couldn't get a side-by-side back there just because it was so thick and in the steepest holler. And so we all just went up to it, and we're just looking around whenever we get up to it. And we're just like, we're throwing numbers around, I'm saying 180, 185. And then the property owner, Troy, like I said, we're not guys that just like eat, breathe, sleep big bucks. We're just deer hunters.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'd say that's a high 160s. I said, Troy, I think he's a little bigger than a 160-inch deer. But we had no idea, man.
Wow. That's crazy. So at what point did you actually go get this thing scored and realize exactly what he is, and kind of walk us through that process, because we've never had anybody, or at least I've never had a one-on-one conversation with anybody who's killed a record book deer like this. What kind of validation do you have to go through to be able to claim that title, if you will?
Yeah, so it's been absolutely unreal, just even from the start of it to now. But so whenever I got him back to the house, like we do all our own processing and everything. And my buddies that I called, they come over, and the one guy, he had scored, he scored a few deer in his life. Like he's not an official scorer or anything, but he's seen people do it. So he comes over and he goes, dude, that's a 200. Like he knew right away that was a 200+ inch typical. Like he was just by looking at it. And so I'm just like, oh yeah, heck yeah, man. And he put a tape on it, and then he got a number like around like 214 and some change. typical. And I was just like, and he was like, Huff, like, you got to get this in like a safe right now. And I'm just like, I had no idea. I never checked any kind of records or anything. I just go deer hunting. And he was like, you need to call a photographer. You need to get all this. And I'm just like, I'm not calling a photographer. I'm like, it's a deer. I got a bunch of pictures of, me and the deer in the woods and stuff. And he was like, no, this is a big deal. Like, you don't understand. So like, and we didn't like, in my, I had never even checked any record books or anything. And so he was saying, this is Indiana, this could be the Indiana state record. So at that point, I'm like, all right, Indiana state, but we weren't even thinking US record or anything.
Right.
And so later that night, I made a tweet and was like, I didn't put it out there. I'd never posted any pictures yet, just because my buddy was like, hey, don't wait till tomorrow to start like figuring out what you're going to do. Well, in the meantime, I couldn't sleep that evening, that night. And I get a call. Like I said earlier, I know Luke pretty well. And I had just made a tweet and I said, I think I killed the biggest buck in Indiana. That's all I put. Never put any pictures or nothing. And later on at night, it was probably like 2 a.m., I think, because I think that's whenever they got bus call. That's whenever we always had bus call back in the day. And Luke calls me. And I'm like, what the heck's Luke calling me for, And he said, Bubs, he said, let me see this deer. And so I seen him a picture and he was like, dude, you don't understand. Like, this is a different ball game. And I was just like, really? Yeah, it's a big deer. It's, I'm going to put it on the wall. I wasn't really thinking anything. He's like, I'm going to make a phone call for you tomorrow. And he ended up calling Meat Eater, because he was just on a Meat Eater episode, antelope hunting. And yeah, so he made the phone call for me, and then they called me the next day and kind of walked me through on how to go about scoring it and who to get a hold of. And yeah, it was a big ordeal and process that I had no idea about,
Yeah. Wow. That is crazy. So what is the official score?
So the official score is 211 and 4/8. It's right behind the Milo Hanson. His was like 213 and some change. So we missed the world record by like an inch and a half.
So biggest typical whitetail in in the United States, second in the world, right?
So yeah, because I think Milo's was in Canada.
Yeah.
And they said that the James Jordan buck was it held the typical US record for like 107 years. And that was the crazy thing about it, because it was like since 1914 or something was the last time it had been broken.
That is insane.
Nuts.
Holy cow, man.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can Google your name and see that, you've been in all these magazines and podcasts, and, like you were saying at the beginning, these shows and everything, leading in, or for the past year, I guess you could say now. How crazy has that been? Just because like you said, you're a blue collar guy, you're just a deer hunter, man, So what is this? Has it been overwhelming, or?
I mean, it has been, but I mean, it's crazy. I love it. I mean, I just never thought it would, I'd ever have this opportunity or anything, just getting and going and talking deer hunting with other deer hunters and, showing a deer off that, it's just crazy to me. It doesn't make any, every day I just look at him and just go, why? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, because let me tell you something. So after I killed this deer, neighbors, so my neighbors had a bunch of trail cams of him. They had been after this deer for like 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And he had been traveling 8 miles. This is what's crazy about the story too. Like, so after that night that, Combs called me and everything. And then the next day, Meat Eater called me. And then they posted a story that said this buck might crush the Indiana state record. And at that point, we're just thinking, state record. We didn't really know about USA and stuff like that. And so that kind of blew it up where people were calling, and that was pretty overwhelming that week. Different podcasts and magazines and stuff, and just wanting the story. And so that was pretty crazy. But anyways, my adjacent neighbor, who I had never met until that weekend, who had been after this deer, had 3 years of trail cams of him on his Lucky Buck mineral. So he comes over, and I just had him in the walk-in cooler at the house. We had a couple other deer hanging up, and I open up the cooler, and he goes, "That's him." He just put his head down. He goes, "That's him." And because he had actually had a 200-yard open or freehand shot at him in 2020 season. In the 2020 season, whenever he was an 11-pointer, and somebody found those sheds, and those were 197. So he had been after this deer. He has more history with this deer than really anybody. So anyways, I got to talking to him, and he gave me all of his trail cam pics and videos and stuff. It was pretty cool. We still keep up today, about this deer season. And then there was another guy 8 miles away who had been hunting this deer for the past 3 years. It's just crazy how far he was traveling. And he was only at that 8 miles away. He was only going there December, January, February. And then my adjacent neighbor was getting him all through spring, summer, and then rut. And then he would ghost him during the winter months, which he was going back, 8 miles away, which is crazy.
Wow. And you were just right place, right time then.
Right place, right time. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, so I've been hunting that property for years and years and years. And like, even when I was running trail cameras, we never got any kind of deer like that in my, you know what I mean? Like, you would see some decent deer, but never anything like that. So it was just crazy. And then, the neighbor coming over, and he was a real nice guy. Both of the guys were awesome. But yeah, the one guy, Chad, that's adjacent to me, he goes, I put a lot of money into that deer because he had him on how many Lucky Buck mineral sites. And he goes, I put how much money into that deer in the past 3 years, he goes. But it was just funny. He was cool about it. But yeah, nuts.
Man, I'm glad they're cool about it, because that stings, for any bow hunter or hunter just in general to have a deer like that on camera and have it slide away like that. But that, man, what an incredible opportunity, man. That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
One of the things that we really like to have on this podcast and everything, and I know this is one of the things that Tyler had in mind when he was talking to you and everything, but it we love to tell these kind of stories where we have just everyday deer hunters, like you say, and just either crazy or unusual, incredible opportunities, whatever come their way. And man, it was a big year for the Midwest last year with your deer, and I believe that the non-typical world record was broken last year or a year before too, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was the year before. There's just big deer hitting the ground. And I think there's going to be a lot of big deer hit the ground this year too. They're just getting bigger and bigger. Seems like.
Man, and that's the thing, is they're out there, and that's what's really cool about telling these kind of stories, is it really shows that, hey, you don't have to hunt these crazy farms or crazy ranches or properties, whatever it might be. You never know when a giant is just going to come strolling by and everything. Just no matter what environment you're in, especially up there in the Midwest, man. Everybody knows that there's giants tucked back in those woods. And really cool to hear a success story about somebody that not just killed a big deer that, caught him off guard, but also just to have a record book deer, the biggest typical in America. That's incredible. Very cool.
It's crazy, especially where I deer hunt, man. It's a hog farm, like 185 acre hog farm. I mean, probably a 60-40 timber and crops. And I mean, it smells like hog, man. It's all like what I always tell people, like my cover scent is I'll walk through the hog barns and then go sit in a tree, because that's what they're used to smelling all the time is, hog manure. So, yeah, it's just, if people would see the farm and be like, how did this deer come from here? And it's like, and that's what, like you said, like, and I tell people, you just got to be in a tree at the right place at the right time, and you just never know what's going to come by. I mean, especially during the rut.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. Granted, we don't, down here in Texas, we don't have the caliber of whitetails that y'all have up there for sure. But yeah, man, the rut and post rut, man, it does crazy things. I saw bucks that I'd never seen before on camera last year start showing up that kind of toward the end of that rut, and then after, and they hung around for quite a bit. So yeah, just like I said, you never know what's going to walk out of the woods in front of you. That's incredible.
That's the fun thing about it.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, so what has been the biggest, since I know, like you said, magazines and people reaching out and the shows and everything, all that's been kind of out of the norm and crazy for you. But what's been through all that, what's been the craziest thing that or the craziest opportunity you've had to share your story with somebody as far as just at a level you never thought that you'd be able to, as a deer hunter, share a story like that or be on, if that makes sense. I might not word that right, but
yeah. So I've got to meet some cool people, like the Real Tree guys. I got to go down to the Real Tree farm and did a podcast with Michael Waldale, and met Bill Jordan and David Blanton and all those, Tyler Jordan. And it was just awesome. I mean, I just never, that's what I kept telling those guys. I was like, dude, I used to watch your guys' VHS tapes, as a kid. And then, once DVDs came, I was buying the DVDs, and, just to be able to just hang with those guys for a day and, just talk deer hunting and show me around the farm. It was just awesome. Those guys and the meat eater guys, just talking deer hunting. I just never thought that I would get to hang out with guys like that I had been, looked up to for so many years. And yeah, it's just been a crazy experience.
that's awesome. Are you like going on tour for music and stuff and just bringing the buck out with you, or doing anything like that?
So it's actually the flipped. I'm taking the deer, and then I'll play like 3 or 4 songs like at the shows and stuff. So like I'll get up, show the deer off for however many hours that day at wherever we're at, and then at the end of it, then they'll have like a stage and stuff set up, and then I just play 3 to 4 songs. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And we'll have a guy up there just like asking questions and stuff, and about the deer and music, just kind of bringing both to the show. And yeah, and just getting sponsorships and stuff like that, and going around and promoting their stuff and their brand. And it's just, I didn't even know there was deer shows. That's what's so crazy. Like I didn't even know this stuff even went on.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome, man. So as we're about to enter another fall hunting season, so I know you're, like you said, you're just a deer hunter, man, but you killed this buck last year. You've had all this last year, right? I'm not a year off, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
2021.
Gotcha. So you killed this buck last year, and then moving into this fall, after all this has happened, and you've you've had all these crazy opportunities with all these people. What does hunting season look like coming up?
Oh man. So actually the property that I killed moose on, it got hit bad with EHD this year.
Oh.
So nobody, we're not even yeah, it's terrible. The property owner, he said they're finding more dead animals than they are live animals. So it's been terrible. So I ended up actually getting a property down about an hour or so from that property, and just a little 30 some acre tract. But it's got a lot of potential. I think I just put up my trail cams up last week, started running my heat wave scrape talkers, and see if we can get these bucks moving. And I'm just kind of getting intel this year, just because this is my first year hunting this property. But it seems like it's going to be pretty promising. But I wish I could still go hunt that 185 acre tract, but man, it happens. Like about every 5 years, it gets hit with that EHD, and just me, the property owner, my dad, and his boys, we won't shoot deer that year, and then usually that next year it comes back. So just leave it a year, and hopefully next year be good. But yeah, I'm excited, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's crazy is it seems like no matter, there's always the question that guys ask, like, well, how do you top that? How do you top that? And at least everybody I've asked that's killed a big deer or their best deer, whatever it might be, it's, at the end of the day, they're deer hunters, man. They're going to keep plugging away. And,
Yep.
For just a little late point could walk out and they'll just still get just excited about it. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's how I am, man. It's like, shooting him, but my biggest before him was that 134-inch 10-pointer. So like I'm going back to that. Like the odds of me shooting a 200-inch is slim to none. So I'm just going back to that 134. If I could shoot 140, 150, 160, if I can work my way up, or at least, I'm not going to let a 150-inch deer walk by. If he walks by, he's going to get shot. So, it's just back to, that was just crazy. And it's just back to shooting, hopefully a decent deer this year. Maybe my nephew will kill a big deer this year. I'm getting him involved in hunting, and he killed his first 2 deer last year with me. And yeah, he's more fired up than I am, I think, this year. So that's going to be the fun this year, is getting him hopefully shooting a deer on camera. I told him, so that'll be awesome.
Very cool. That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's always really cool to get kids involved in hunting and everything. And that's awesome that your nephew is just as pumped, if not more pumped than you to be able to do something like that. What does he think of your giant deer?
So here's a crazy story, actually. So he just started hunting last year. He was 7 years old last year. So he got his hunting license, took his test and everything, and killed his first doe the first time I took him out on youth season last year. And then the first time I took him out with a crossbow, October 17th, he killed a deer, which was a buck. So he shot, but that morning that he killed that buck. So after he shot that doe, I told him, I said, Easton, or actually it wasn't on the 17th. It was on Halloween, because I killed a doe that Halloween too, that morning. So that morning on Halloween, Easton said, right when we get in the stand, it's still not shooting hours yet. And he said, hey, Uncle Dusty, he said, wouldn't it be crazy if I shot a big buck and got it in Bass Pro Shop? And to me, I had never even talked big deer with Easton or anything, just because, I wasn't expecting anything like that. So, but to him, he had been to Bass Pro that week before. His mom took him, my sister took him up to Bass Pro. And so to him, like, that's just what deer look like. He had seen all those big deer at Bass Pro. And, I explained to him, like, that's not going to happen, but the first deer that comes by with some antlers on him, pull the trigger on him. And 4 days later, I shot that deer. And I mean, he was bawling, like, because my sister said he was crying because I told him that that would never happen, that there's not deer like that around here. And to me, it was impossible. But to him, it was like, as a 7-year-old kid, they just say things and they don't even, and it's just crazy that it happened. It's just crazy that a deer like that walked by. I mean, so I'm taking him to the woods this year, whatever that kid's got going on. I mean, he's got something, but yeah.
Yeah, that man, that's crazy. You rocked his world a little bit there. Just, oh man, they really do exist.
Well, that's yeah. And it's like, and that's what's so crazy. Like, and I remember him saying that, like, it was such a, like, where does that even come from? Because, like, I have never, talked about deer and Bass Pro Shop. I had never, talked record deer or anything with him. I just told him, like, the first deer that has some horns on him, you can shoot it, like, because, the odds of shooting a big deer is not very likely. So,
yeah.
And then that happened. And now he's thinking, well, I want to shoot one that big now. And it's just like, well, I hope so.
I hope so, man. But that's a once in a lifetime deer right there. So
that's what I told him. I was like, I hope you kill a bigger one than that. I mean, I'll take you hunting for the rest of your life, and hopefully he'll get something close to it. But
yeah,
yep.
Man, it's just like I've already said several times now. It's just crazy that those deer are out there. You never know when one's going to come out. I know really early on when we started our podcast here, this is episode 120 something, all the way back at like episode 8 or something, like when we just started out. A friend of mine that outside of hunting and everything, he shot back in 2011 or 2012 down here in Texas. He shot a county record in one of the 4th or 5th biggest deer in Texas. And he has good caliber deer on his place here, up toward the Texas Panhandle, but not anything 200 plus. And it's just one of those, one of the same, kind of same deal, just one of those November stories where this deer comes, never seen him before, just came strolling by. And if our listeners are interested, they can go back and listen to episode 8. But the game warden actually told him that he had seen the deer like 11 miles or something away was that deer's home range, and the rut had just pulled him that far out. So it's just, man, you never know. You never know.
Yep. All those deer that are on trail camera, I mean, they can just like that disappear, because once that rut hits, though, their nose is on the ground, they're gone.
Yeah. And that can either work in or against your favor. Your bucks can either leave or you can get new ones.
Yep, exactly.
Well, man, really, really awesome story. Awesome having you on the podcast and getting to talk about this. Is there anything that we're missing in regards to this incredible opportunity, or anything else you'd like to share about it?
I mean, I think that's about it. If you want to plug in my, I got 3 new songs that I just put out in August.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your music.
Listen to those on. Yeah, so I got all my stuff on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where you stream or can buy music, it'll be there. But I just put out a 3-song EP. It's called Good Dog. And it's 3 of my favorite tracks that I've ever, been a part of. So yeah, if people want to check it out, I'd really appreciate it. And yeah.
Do you have any tours or shows coming up?
My last show of this year is October 1st. I'll be in Warsaw, Illinois, at some deer festival. And then next year, we're booked up all through the spring, winter months, and into the summer. So, yep, I'll have that all posted on my social media and everything for next year's shows, and where we'll be at and stuff like that.
Gotcha. You coming down to Texas at all?
I hope so, man. I'd love to get down there. see if we can figure something out. The farthest that I've been now is Iowa. I did the Iowa City, or no, Des Moines. I did Des Moines, Iowa. They had some kind of big buck thing there, but yeah, I'm hoping to expand a little more this year. I just mostly did all Midwest this year, and then next year we're talking about going out, to the ATA show in Vegas. Hopefully, Texas would be awesome, or just anywhere outside of I just kind of want to go around just to talk to other deer hunters outside the Midwest too, and just, talk deer hunting.
Yeah, man. Yeah, if you're ever in the North Texas area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, be sure that you hit us up. We'd love to find a time to hang out and I don't know, maybe one day share deer camp. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man.
Awesome. Well, before we hang it up, I know you mentioned the tracks online and everything on the streaming apps and everything, but tell us on social media, where can people find you?
So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and it's the Huff Buck, at the Huff Buck, and I post all my shows or where I'm going to be at, or just what's going on in life and stuff like that. You can find all my information there, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate again, man, you taking the time this afternoon to hop on here with me and share your story. Incredible.
Yep. Thank you for having me, Sam. I enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Well, for our listeners, you guys heard from Dustin there, where you guys can go find him and everything. So check him out on social media, give him a follow, go listen to his music as well. Give all that a good thorough walkthrough and everything. If you guys are new to Fall Obsession or our podcast, thank you for listening. We drop a new episode every single Monday morning, and you guys can go to any of your popular podcast streaming apps to listen. And we're also on Carbon TV with our podcast and a few of our other video series, and Waypoint TV as well. Those are all places you guys can stream our podcast. Podcast videos are on our YouTube channel, along with all of our other forms of media series. So go subscribe to Fall Obsession's YouTube. Fallobsession.com is the website, and that's the hub. That's where you guys can go to find all of our content, whether it's the video series, the podcast, wild game recipes, gear reviews, other educational articles and videos, whatever you guys are looking for. We cover hundreds of different topics in the hunting and outdoor industry. Ridge Rock Hunt Company is the podcast partner. Derek and Lacey out there in Mississippi, they book hunts for outfitters, vetted outfitters across the country. So if you're looking to get set up for a hunt that you've been saving up for or anticipating for a while, give Derek a call. Super laid back, down to earth guy, and he'll get you situated in a spot and with an outfitter that fits your needs. We're actually going to have him back on the podcast here coming up to talk about an alligator hunt that he had. So looking forward to that. But Dustin, thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you all for listening. We're back again next week, as always, for another Fall Obsession podcast episode. We'll catch you then.